Welcome to Altnabreac Towers, Episode 9, The So-Called White Strip and Frank McCulloch. The following episode is fiction inspired by true events. Following the driveway wars with Network Rail, the trouble began with a piece of paper. Not an ordinary piece of paper. No, this one came from the Scottish Land Registry. It looked like it had been printed with malevolence in mind. Lines, grids, and one particularly smug white strip sat on the station house kitchen table, glaring at Ian Thomas Appleby, like it knew exactly what it was doing. Elizabeth Howe noticed it first, which was unsurprising, given she had been watching the table for 20 minutes without blinking. She squinted at the map, her finger hovering over the offending strip, not touching it, never touching it, just close enough to assert dominance. "Ian," she said, calm as a bomb about to explode, "the white strip has moved." Ian, precariously balanced on a chair with a ruler in one hand and coffee in the other, nearly dropped both. "It hasn't," he shouted, wobbling dangerously. "Ah!" Elizabeth jabbed the map with sudden violence. "Yes, it has. Yesterday it was here. Now it's there, near the shed." She leaned closer, eyes narrowed, breath shallow, as though the map might whisper back. This was not speculation. This was observation. Ian leaned closer, squinting through the same spectacles he had been wearing since 2017. Impossible. Behind them, a chicken, one of the last survivors of what had once been a proud and numerous flock, hopped onto a chair and regarded the map with interest. The chicken army, as it had been known, had suffered heavy losses in recent weeks due to a combination of dwindling funds, relentless stress, and what Ian referred to as strategic protein consumption. Elizabeth preferred not to call it cannibalism, even if it technically was. Cannibalism implied choice. This had been necessity. "Possibly destiny. It's planning something," Ian muttered. Elizabeth nodded slowly. She had already written intent detected in her notebook. Network Rail had decided, for reasons that remained mysterious and bureaucratically absurd, that they owned the driveway, not access. Not rights. Ownership. Based entirely on the white strip. Their argument, Elizabeth said, lips tight, is that the driveway is out with our registered boundary. She said out with the way one might say treason. Ian recoiled. "Out with? Out with is what you say when you're stealing something. If that's theirs," he said, "then this grass isn't ours, that post isn't ours. That shed, not ours." Elizabeth adjusted her glasses with shaking fingers. "Technically, you now live in a philosophical concept." She liked the sound of that far too much. Ian nodded grimly, squatting in a theory. By mid-morning, the white strip had taken a diagonal path across the map, pointing accusingly at the cattle grid. Elizabeth noticed first. Of course she did. "It's aggressive," Ian bellowed. The chicken hopped atop the map, covering the white strip completely. Ian froze. "It's allied," he whispered. Elizabeth's eyes widened. "Confirmed," she wrote. Ian tried recording a video. The camera tipped over. "Access is not the issue. The issue is Network Rail claiming they own our driveway, the strip." Elizabeth pinched the bridge of nose, not out of frustration, but concentration. "It's paper. It can't move." She did not believe this. She simply felt it should hear the rule. It can when it wants to. Ian shouted. No discussion of the white strip was complete without Bartholomew Snicklefritz, British Transport Police. He arrived at that moment, bursting through the door and promptly slipping on a chicken feather, papers flying everywhere. Elizabeth took note of the feather's trajectory. Ian jabbed at the map. "Frank McCulloch. He's in league with the white strip. Look there next to the loading bay." His phantom clipboard. Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. Internally, she made a diagram. "You mean he's imaginary?" "No. He's everywhere, coordinating trains. Measuring sleepers. The white strip obeys him." Elizabeth felt a chill. She had suspected as much. The chicken squawked in agreement. According to the plans, which had been drafted without consulting the FTS's actual residents, a loading bay would appear directly in front of Station House at night with 400 tons. Trains rolling between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. Ian jabbed at the map again. "The white strip and Frank McCulloch are conspiring." Elizabeth sighed, but only because the truth was exhausting.
"Ow, baby."
"Only in your imagination." The white strip moved again. Elizabeth screamed internally. Outwardly, she stiffened. "Elizabeth, it's crossing the cattle grid. Ian, maybe. Step back." She said this while stepping forward herself. "I cannot step back." Ian lunged at the map. The white strip rolled up like a cobra and smacked him in the face. Elizabeth gasped, not in shock, but vindication. It's attacking. Chickens squawked and flapped across the room. Ian tripped over a ruler, fell into a chair, and sent coffee flying over the map. Elizabeth hissed. Liquid evidence. They've allied with the white strip and Frank McCulloch. Elizabeth made a note. Situation worsening expected. Ian scrambled toward the front door, gesturing wildly, arms flailing, and failed spectacularly to notice the door swinging open just as he reached it. It smacked him squarely in the shoulder, bouncing him backward into the wall like a pinball. His arms and legs flew in every direction, and in his panic, he tripped over Lieutenant Beacons, who squawked in surprise as they both collapsed in a tangle of limbs, feathers, and papers. Chickens scattered, some flapping onto the table, others pecking indignantly at the map. Elizabeth watched intently, committing angles and impacts to memory. Still on his feet, Ian pointed at everything around him, the shed, the chickens, the map, and shouted at the top of his lungs. If this line owns the driveway, then the chickens are officially property managers. Elizabeth nodded. That tracked. He spun in a full circle, nearly toppling the table. Frank McCulloch. He is an imaginary dictator ruling over this chaos. Elizabeth underlined dictator twice. Another wild pivot, another dramatic gesture, and he slammed his hand against the wall. And this house, this entire house, is unregistered. Elizabeth stood at the doorway, hands on her hips, heart pounding with triumph. Tea? She asked. Ian froze mid-gesture, whipped around, and then, realizing the absurdity of the moment, flailed even harder, shrieking, "No. Yes. This is war. This is a conspiracy of lines and chickens and imaginary men with clipboards." Elizabeth smiled thinly. Progress. By bedtime, Elizabeth had finally managed to tuck the white strip into a folder. The folder was empty. The white strip had slipped under the door and now pointed accusingly at the living room carpet. Elizabeth crouched slowly. "Ian," she said, voice trembling with awe. "It's officially sentient and Frank McCulloch is haunting it." Ian groaned and collapsed into a chair. The strip had moved onto his lap. The chicken clucked. Ian raised a finger. "Yes, you've won this round. White strip and Frank McCulloch." Somewhere, far away, a printer laughed again. Just as Ian untangled himself from the chair, rulers and a very indignant chicken. The white strip, apparently deciding it preferred theatrics to ownerships, lithered across the floor and wrapped itself around Bartholomew Snickla Fritz's nose. The chicken squawked triumphantly. The printer spat out yet another white strip, and Ian, flailing wildly, yelled, "I surrender. Take the driveway. Just leave me my dignity." Elizabeth surveyed the carnage, eyes shining, and muttered, "Next time. We're installing a moat." Somewhere, a lone feather drifted gently to the ground, and it was impossible to tell whether it belonged to the chicken, the white strip, or Frank McCulloch's imaginary ghost, but Elizabeth decided it was evidence and carefully picked it up. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.